When we pray on our knees, can I just tell you, it's the original drop it's like it's hot. Can I just say that? Some of you parents, you just need to do that. You need to just get on your knees and start praying, and your kids will come in and be like, hey, what are you doing, Mom? Hey, I'm just dropping it like it's hot. Mom, do you even know what that means? Yeah, but I'm going old school. I'm going spiritual OG. My prayers are fire, don't you understand? You kids, new school with your Drake, you know, God's plan. What does it even mean that I only love my bed and my mama? I mean, what does that even mean?
When I look over my life, where I started and where I am in my journey now, man, I was a total underdog. I mean, a dark horse. And I kind of like it that way. I kind of like being the dark horse because people don't see it coming. And in fact, I really didn't even see myself coming. I was in the shadows and in no time was in the spotlight. When I was in my early 30s, I remember sitting with my son Lincoln. We had just had our first child, and I was reflecting back over the decade. Man, I had been to 20 countries, spoken live before 2 million people. Man, I remember meeting people, politicians, pop stars, even pro wrestlers, you know, the people I got to share a platform with, speaking and sharing my message in country and nations and stadiums after arena. It was blowing my mind. I'd met my soulmate, married her, I'd written a book, and it became a bestseller. I mean, I just was feeling so blessed. But it didn't start that way. When I was born, I don't know all the details, but things in my family were becoming a little more turbulent. By the age of 14 months, my mom and dad were divorced, and my dad, he joined a biker gang. I know this sounds like really melodramatic, but he did. And let's just say he was into exporting illegal substances up and down the coast of California. And I grew up with my mom and my older brother. And my mom, she worked 3 jobs. She was this powerful influence in my life. She really led me in my faith, showed me that heroes really exist. I mean, she would save my life almost every single day. But when you grow up in a single parent household, especially in the 80s, you know, a single parent mom, you grow up really poor. I mean, we were on government assistance, welfare, and the great thing though about growing up being poor when you're a kid is you don't even really know you're poor. I mean, you just ask your mom things like, Mom, how come nobody else drives a 1977 orange Ford Pinto station wagon with fake wood paneling on the side? You know, or Mom, why is the cheese so big? You know, government cheese, it's good, but it's big, you know? Things like that growing up were definitely funny. My mom would make some of my clothes. She would sew some of them. We just made it work. You know, it's so funny when you are poor. I began to notice some things like there are certain clothes that are made like for poor people. I mean, you never have designer stuff, right? My shirt, it would say Nike, but it would be spelled Niky, you know, things like that. Or like I noticed like Walmart's brand, Faded Glory, like why did it have to be faded? You know, couldn't it just be glorious or new or something? Or my favorite brand, or actually the most embarrassing kind of hazing brand that I had to wear, was a brand of jeans called Bugle Boy. Now, I don't know any junior high guy who feels manly in a pair of jeans named after a prepubescent horn player. I mean, who even strives to be a bugle player when they grow up? I mean, if you're looking for an instrument, there's so many cooler names. Like, instead of bugle boy, what about like drummer dudes, or like, I don't know, guitar guys, something. I also grew up rather large. I was a obese teenager. I weighed 250 pounds in the 8th grade. I mean, kids were horrible. They would, I'd be walking by the side of the pool and kids would push me in, sing the Titanic theme song. I mean, just stuff like that. And it was hard as in an era and a time where you're trying to find where your place is in the world. and people are defining you by what they see. What it did for me in that moment was priceless. It made me focus on my character. It made me work twice as hard, and I think that's where I had to learn some of my comedic skills to try to work my way in where there was a lot of hurdles maybe for folks who are in middle school to accept you. You have to work on some other things that are unseen. And it's kind of in that unseen world where you can begin to change what you see in your world. Now that would change after some time. I would have a life transformation. Over those next years, from my freshman year of high school until about age 20, I lost about 80 pounds of fat. But it was the unseen that began to change the scene. You know, right before high school, I came to faith. I had this encounter with God. And I won't go into a ton of detail right now, but I was so inspired and drawn in to the words of Jesus. I mean, my friends, you know, like during that time, Pearl Jam and Tupac were speaking to them, you know, they got them. But for me, it was a little different. For me, I would look at the words and the lines of this man named Jesus, and it would send me into a space that I couldn't describe. It was speaking to me, even though it was 2,000 years old, it was speaking to me in a way that nothing else, no other icon or pop star could speak to me in that time. And I became a follower of Jesus, and I couldn't get enough of his words. It became a compass for me in my teenage years to guide me, to lead me, and to give me kind of some bearings in the midst of this sea of hormones and emotions and just confusion. Became my bedrock. A lamp unto my feet, as the psalmist said, where I had something firm to stand on, something immovable, that though fads would come and things would happen, it gave me peace in the storm. I'll never forget this time where it seemed like there was a series of suicides in my school, in my high school. And, you know, I'm hearing these words of Jesus and focusing on them. I mean, every day I'm reading what him and his friends had to say, and you know, trying to apply my life to it. And I remember just thinking to myself, man, I've had a transformation in my life. Coming to faith and beginning to follow Jesus really gave me hope. It gave me peace. I even saw my grades go up. I mean, I started dropping pounds. It wasn't because of Jesus. You know, I wasn't praying, you know, the calories away or anything like that. It was more the unseen, what I was thinking about, what was happening to me as I walked and tried to put these truths into my life. Something on the inside began to kind of, I don't know, boil over. I knew that something had transformed my life, and I couldn't stand to watch others walking through darkness, taking their own lives. And so I remember one day, it's my junior year of high school, I went to this place on our campus called Senior Square. It's the Quad. It's kind of where everyone goes to hang out right before the end of lunch. So we're all congregating, the end of our break, and we're about to go to class. And I remember one day standing up on a bench and saying, come around, I've got something to say, you know, come around, I've got something to say. Nobody moved, they just looked, you know, maybe the 3 chest clip kids, but besides them, you know, everyone else is just staring at me. And I began to share this. I said something along the lines of this. You know, all of us, we wear masks when we come to school. Some of us, we put on a happy face. Some of us, we put on a hard face. But inside, most of us, if you're like me, man, we're hurting. Some of us, we have broken hearts. Some of us are in despair. But I want to let you know the hope that I found in God, and that God has a great plan for you. That Jesus can give you a pathway. And all of a sudden, one of my vice principals came up and said, "All right, step down." I looked at my peers, about 400 of them congregating around at this point. And I just continued on. You are a child of God, and God has a plan for your life. My other vice principal came up. "All right, young man, step down." I looked down, and I looked back at my peers standing out there. And what happened next, I'll never forget, because it wasn't what I expected at all. Because out of the crowd, I began to hear this: "Let him speak." And then another student, hey, let him speak. My vice principal's still telling me, "Hey, step down," standing in front of me. But out of the crowd, another, "Let him speak." And again, "Let him speak, let him speak." And I stood there, and when I was done, I stepped down. And I'll never forget the response to that, as 16 people wanted to know more about how to walk this road. They wanted to know that if God had a plan for them and a hope for them, that maybe they could find that. It's so interesting. The message that I thought would probably be laughed at that day was really the message that the people in my sphere of influence needed to hear. If you're an underdog or a dark horse out there, I just want to say, there is a message inside of you. And the greatest agony is living with this untold story inside of yourself. And that sometimes you may wonder if the message that you have is needed for those who are around you and what they will think. But oftentimes, the message that is inside of you is the message that your peers, that your co-workers, that your sphere of influence desperately needs to hear. And they're just waiting for someone with the courage to speak. In high school, I ended up going to a teen conference in an arena. And it was a Friday night, all day Saturday event. And it changed my life. And I know a lot of people say that, but it gave me a vision and a perspective of what I wanted to do. There were people on the stage who were sharing their story, their message. It was filled with faith and hope. And it filled me with faith and hope and encouragement. And I knew in that moment, that's what I want to do. I want to stand and share my story. I want to travel and let people know, man, there's hope. There is a future for you, and there is a God. And so this new vision began to happen in my heart. I was a senior in high school, but I didn't know how it was going to happen. But I believed, and I did anything that I could to begin to work towards that goal. I spoke at any place that would give me an opportunity to speak. I entered a Rotary Club speaking competition. I did whatever I could to try to train myself or to get to a place where I could share my story. And about 2 years later, things weren't really opening up. And so I decided, well, I just am going to head out on the road. And so I talked some friends into jumping in a van with me, and we started calling all sorts of places, will you allow me to come and speak? And they'd be like, well, how much do you charge? And I would say $75, I just, in my gas money. How about that? Will you do that? And places began to have me come, or in little clubs or churches and anywhere I could go. And eventually I booked up my schedule. 6 nights a week, I was speaking at a different place. 3 weeks a month, I take 1 week off to book and to work on booking more engagements until 9 months of the year, 3 weeks a month, I was speaking night after night after night. Now, I'll never forget, it was my birthday. I was turning 23. And I had been doing this night after night, just kind of, I was tired. I was, not really having an impact. There may be 5 people there, some maybe 500 at a couple, but just 5 to 50 people just sharing my story. And I got this call on my birthday, and I'll never forget it. It was the president of the organization that I had attended as a senior in high school, this Arena teen conference, who called me up and said, "Hey, would you like to speak at one of our events?" And of course, my jaw dropped open. This was my hope, my dream, and I never thought it would come this quickly. And so 2 weeks later, I was flown out to the Cow Palace in San Francisco. Now, this is where I was born. The Cow Palace, it's where the Warriors played. The Cow Palace, people, the Beatles played at the Cow Palace, the Rolling Stones, U2. And now I was going to be speaking in the very same place. As a child, I would see, circuses and different shows in the Cow Palace. But now I was about to be standing in an arena filled with people sharing my story. And my dream was beginning to materialize. Just 1 week after that, I'd be flown to Dallas Friday night, 8,000 people in an arena. That next day, Saturday, I took a red eye to Kansas City, another 5,000, sharing my story before these audiences across the nation. Your dreams aren't that far away. The difference between impossible and possible is just inches. Just a heartbeat, just a breath away. And sometimes this is what I say, the difference between impossible and possible is just an I am, just an I'm. And when you take out the I'm not qualified to do this. When you take out the I'm not good enough, I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not wealthy enough, I'm not educated enough. When you take the I'm out of impossible, there's nothing that's impossible. All things are possible. So I began sharing my story 20 times a year in arenas and stadiums across North America. It was my dream come true, and I was living it. What I didn't tell you is that I quit college to start traveling around. So I hadn't finished my degree yet. And so what this opportunity gave me is I could work on the weekends. I'd fly out to another city, and then I was back in university working on my bachelor's. And I had this kind of commitment to myself that I wasn't going to get married until I finished my bachelor's. And so in the middle of this season where I'm at school 5 days a week during the week and flying out on the weekends, I met a girl. I met my very best friend and my soulmate. And so I knew I wanted to marry this girl, so I started accelerating my classes. I started, one semester I took 7 classes, and somehow still was able, I think I just really wanted to get married, was able to get straight A's. I don't know. I graduated from college, summa cum laude, which was a huge miracle because for most of my life in school growing up, I was in special classes as a kid. A lot of it was emotional, a lot of it was self-esteem. But this was a huge accomplishment for me. And just 3 months later, after I graduated, I married the most beautiful, amazing woman. And we've been married for 15 years. 3 years after I got married, I went back to law school, finished my degree in almost 2.5 years, almost a semester early. Huge accomplishment for a young man who started out struggling in school, who felt stupid, who didn't feel like they had anything to offer and were a failure. Now walking on the other side of an accomplishment with a doctor in front of my name. In my last year of law school, Casey was pregnant. And year number 3 in law school, my son came, Lincoln. And through that whole process, this idea for a book came about. And Casey and I, we worked together to write a book. And in just a few months, it became a bestseller. It blew my mind. The uneducated kid who literally my worst subject was spelling, now accomplishing and writing a best-selling book. All my dark horses out there, you're wondering if you can do what's in your heart. Remember, the only difference between impossible and possible is the I'm not good enough. I'm not qualified enough. I'm not smart enough. Live out your story because you have a gift that only you can give the world. It's hidden in your heart. It's hidden inside of you. You may be in the shadows today, but if you don't stop believing, if you don't stop moving forward, you will see the impossible be possible for you.